Whether it was Mitt Romney, Congressman Ron Paul, or Newt Gingrich, the candidates tended today to move out from the big cities, taking their campaigns to small towns. And we followed them to quaint places like Rochester, where Mitt Romney held a town hall.
This is actually the second time I've met him here in Rochester.
Margaret Skinner is typical of interested New Hampshire voters. She meets potential future presidents. California State Senator Tony Strickland is here to support the Romney campaign by talking to voters one by one.
In California, it's more of a media-driven campaign with the 30-second or 15-second commercials on the radio, on the TV, direct mail. Here it's more retail. They want to hear eye to eye.
Tonight, 5 states are holding presidential primaries, including California. Ktvu's Ken Wayne is at the big board now with the latest returns from across the country. Ken.
Julie, we're getting the raw numbers coming in right now, so let's take a look at the map. These are the 5 states that are having primaries today, including California, where the polls are still open, but we do have some results in from New Jersey, where the polls are closed, and here's how things look. Of course, Mitt Romney is the presumptive GOP nominee, and as things stand right now, he has 82% of the vote. Rick Santorum, who dropped out, has 5%. Newt Gingrich has 3%. And Ron Paul, who is still technically in the race, has 10% of the vote at this point. Let's go to South Dakota, where the polls just closed about 15 minutes ago. And the results are in so far there. Mitt Romney has 64%. Rick Santorum, 13%. Newt Gingrich, 4%. And Ron Paul, something of a spoiler, has 13% of the vote at this point.
KTV's Ken Pritchett live in Tampa with the call to arms for the Golden State's conservatives. Ken?
Well, there was very little activity on the floor today. That will change tomorrow, but California's delegation was busy starting their day with a rising star in the Republican Party.
Recently, the headliner of California's Republican Party, it was Meg Whitman who introduced the man who may one day headline the National Party.
The great governor of the great state of New Jersey, Governor Chris Christie.
Governor Christie delivered a pep rally speech to California's delegation, more than 700 strong, including guests and alternates.
We know California is an uphill climb for Mitt Romney, the same way New Jersey is an uphill climb. But that does not release you from your obligation.
He also dished out political red meat to the crowd, questioning Governor Brown's leadership for taking taxes to the voters.
Jerry Brown? I mean, he won the New Jersey presidential primary over Jimmy Carter when I was 14 years old.
After a one-day delay, the convention is back on track, and it started with business that usually comes near the end of a convention. That's the nomination vote, and it came with some controversy.
After the gavel, a prayer. And after some serious celebration to finally have the Republican National Convention underway, the delegates prepared to get down to business. This is an important day.
We're ready to tell the story, and the roll call is an exciting part of that. It's exciting all of us get up and say, I'm here for Mitt.
The roll call vote is mostly theater, and the day started with some drama. As Congressman Ron Paul made an appearance to cheers from his supporters.
Dr. Paul, what are your thoughts about this?
I didn't know they'd all be here.
Paul, who is not speaking at the convention, made his way to the Nevada delegation, which said it will nominate Paul, not Governor Romney.
We favor a true convention and not just a coronation.
Well, California's delegation got a taste of what to expect tonight after their experience last night when many of their guests were not allowed into the arena just as President Clinton was about to speak. Some of them missed it, and it was all due to overcrowding.
To see musical acts such as Mark Anthony warm up, there is reason to be at the convention early, but 8 hours early?
I got here at 2 o'clock just to make sure that I have a good seat.
San Jose delegate Javier Gonzalez was not the only one. We found delegates catching up on work, others sleeping in their coveted seats, some chairs tagged with familiar names trying to save a spot. Why?
Yesterday night was a very crazy night. People trying to fight for whatever seats were open.
A half hour before President Clinton spoke, no one was allowed into the arena because of overcrowding. Delegate Whip Bob Mulholland says tonight will be worse.
This place will be wall-to-wall, and the fire marshal will have a stroke by 9:30.
Here at San Quentin Prison, for these inmates, it's 3 strikes and they're in for life. What you're seeing is a weekly group therapy program run by convicts called Hope for Three Strikers.
After my military stint, I started using cocaine, and it was all bad after that.
These are just a few dozen of the more than 8,000 California inmates serving life sentences under 3 strikes, a law approved by voters in 1994. But Proposition 36 on this November's ballot would modify 3 strikes. It would require the 3rd strike to be not for just any felony, but for a violent or serious crime. If the measure passes, some 3,000 3-strikers could be released if a judge agrees. One of the eligible may be Alton McSween. His strikes 1 and 2 are for residential burglary, the 3rd strike, petty theft, all considered serious crimes.
I've learned, this is, I want to live my life, and I don't want to live it here. And I think I have too much to offer to society out there that I could be helpful.
Michael Romano, head of the Stanford 3 Strikes Project and co-author of Prop 36, says his proposal merely fixes what he says are the unintended consequences of 3 strikes.
Right now, there are hundreds, actually thousands of people who are serving life sentences for possession of a tiny amount of drugs, a joint of marijuana, petty theft, who are clogging our prisons.
We want somebody with a small drug possession arrest to go to prison for life.
George Gascon and the Los Angeles District Attorney are among the minority of DAs supporting Prop 36. Many in law enforcement feel Prop 36 is a dangerous idea.
Really you're rolling the dice when you shouldn't be. These people have gotten to the point now where they have not been able to really change their behavior substantially, and you're creating a danger for the community.
Look at these pictures of some of the worst, names synonymous with fear, terror, evil. Serial killers such as the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez, Charles Ng, he killed 11. The Trailside Killer David Carpenter, Speed Freak Killer Wesley Shermantine. Remember Ramon Salcido, his 7 victims included his wife and 2 daughters. Scott Peterson, Richard Allen Davis, killer of 12-year-old Polly Klaas, the Helzer brothers, and the rape, torture, and murder duo Michelle Michaud and James DiVeggio. A reminder of just a few of the people now on California's death row. But that could change in November. Proposition 34 would abolish capital punishment here, and the death sentences of those 725 men and women would be commuted to life without the possibility of parole. San Quentin's death row would disappear.
It is about savings and accountability and justice.
I think that Proposition 34 is misguided. It should not pass.
Formidable opponents on this issue are 2 people with long criminal justice credentials. For keeping the death penalty, San Mateo County District Attorney Steve Wagstaff, who personally prosecuted and sent to death row these 3 killers.
Do you have any question as to their guilt?
Not even the slightest.
Jeannie Woodford, now director of Death Penalty Focus, wants to abolish capital punishment.
Thanks so much.
As the warden at San Quentin State Prison, she carried out the executions of these 4 inmates.
At the end of every execution, someone on my staff would say, is the world safer tonight because of what we did? And we never answered that question because we all knew the answer was no.
Although 17 states now have abolished the death penalty, California voters historically have favored capital punishment for some crimes. But this time, well-financed opponents are touting a savings of $100 million a year and the rarity of executions, 13 in 23 years, meaning the condemned are more likely to die of old age. At 82, the Bay Area's Trailside Killer David Carpenter now is the oldest.
I believe that it's time to replace the death penalty in California because it's broken beyond repair.
Those same people who caused the delay, who caused the enormous sum of money to be spent, are saying it's broken, so let's throw it out.
Wagstaff says it's time to fix the system, not get rid of it. Hire more attorneys to speed up appeals. Not having a death penalty, he says, would handicap negotiations for guilty pleas and the recovery of victims' bodies. Wagstaff says he speaks for the murdered victims of death row inmates and keeps their pictures on his desk.
What's the right punishment for the evil perpetrated? It isn't just about the killer. It's about what the killer did.
It is about public policy. How do we spend our criminal justice dollars? What really keeps us safer?
Backers of the proposition say many condemned prisoners are against it because they'd lose their automatic appeals. I wrote several death row inmates asking how they would vote if they could. Ramon Salcido and Richard Ramirez wrote back but wouldn't say. Salcido concerned it might jeopardize his appeal. Rita Williams, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
On your right, you've got Bartlett pear trees.
In the Ford pickup he calls his office, Topper Van Lobensells takes us to his farm in the Delta town of Cortland.
Our family started doing this in 1876.
We bum along a dirt road before stopping next to rows of newly planted corn. But in these fields lies a conflict over the science this fifth-generation farmer uses.
By buying these seeds, we use much less herbicides, and sometimes not at all.
The seeds are genetically modified to resist insects and require less water.
The only way we can survive in California is we need to be on the cutting edge of the latest technology.
At the Strauss family farm near Marshall in Marin County, organic dairy farmer Albert Strauss is pushing back against genetically modified technology.
I have my own concerns about what effects it has on land, what effects it has on animals.
He feeds his cows only non-GMO feed and worries that bioengineered crops could contaminate nearby organic crops through airborne seeds such as the alfalfa his cows eat.
It's not just that they can just do this and not have an effect on the rest of society.
These California farmers represent the two sides of the fight over food labels.
More than 10,000 public schools in California, more than 6 million students, ranked 47th in the nation. Many argue the Golden State's education system is failing. This November, 2 ballot initiatives aim to address the problem. Governor Brown's Proposition 30 and Proposition 38, funded almost entirely by one person, Molly Munger.
I'm a product of the California public schools. And when I went to those schools, they were funded 5th highest in the entire United States.
Munger, a civil rights attorney, has invested more than $30 million of her own money into Prop 38. Why? She says to pay it forward so kids today have the same resources she had. And in doing so, Munger is in direct competition with Governor Brown's Proposition 30.
38 does two things that are very important. It raises 8 times more money for schools than 30, and all that new money for schools goes directly to schools on a per pupil basis.
Well, the governor's Proposition 30 and Munger's Prop 38 are competing measures. When you read the voter guide, you will see that they both fund education, but that the similarities mostly end there. Proposition 30 raises the sales tax for 4 years and the income tax for 7 years on those making more than $250,000. Prop 38 raises the income tax on all but the poorest Californians for about 12 years. 30 generates about $6 billion a year initially. Munger's Prop 38 raises $10 billion a year for schools.
Sunrise, South Tracy. First light. People are up, working, and eating. This is Four Corners Diner on a fall Thursday morning.
Taxpayers pay for it. Who's the taxpayer?
Everybody's got to give a little bit.
Our energy situation, we're shutting down coal mines.
They are stern, concerned faces of farmers, businessmen, retirees, Republicans, and Democrats talking presidential politics and the future of our country, all while sipping coffee that still costs about $1.
Who did you vote for 4 years ago?
I voted for Obama.
And what are you going to do?
And I'll tell you why.
What are you going to do now?
I'm a Republican.
And you're
I've been a Republican for 50 years.
1 hour east of the city dominated by liberal politics, there is conversation brewing similar to that in battleground states.
If Obama's reelected, at the end of the next 4 years, we'll be so far in debt that we'll be taking half of our gross national product to pay the interest on the debt.
For the majority of those at the breakfast table, farming here in the Central Valley, well, it's life. And therefore, the economy and the way it's shaped is quite critical. But it does not mean that they don't have an opinion about what is happening overseas. He got bin Laden, though, right?
Well, so what? So he got bin Laden.
Now, it's not easy. It's not easy. You see what's going on in the Middle East.
that transition is going to take decades, but we've started.
They are 7 men who, when we polled,
How many of you are actually going to vote for Mitt Romney?
I am.
3 raised their hands for Romney, 3 for Obama, and 1 undecided.
Both parties have ruined the infrastructure in the middle class, like Jim said earlier. And to me, that's what makes this country.
A country that allows its people to vote for its leader. A country where every vote counts for every candidate.
So I'm confused. Are you going to give Romney a chance?
I can't give him a chance.
Whether it's a swing state, a red state, or a blue state, the Obama-Romney debate is cooking in diners like this one across America.
So if you kill business, what kind of government do you have? You have a broke government.
I know these guys keep saying that Mitt Romney's a businessman, but I don't think that he's a small businessman.
And as this conversation goes, the clock ticks, and the final countdown to Election Day is underway. Mike Meeback, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
As we've said, there are about more than half a dozen swing states that are crucial to win this presidential election. KTVU's Ken Wayne and Heather Holmes join us now with the breakdown of voting groups in 4 of those states. Ken, Heather?
Well, we're expecting to get results from Ohio very soon, and Ohio is a critical state. That's all you've been hearing about for the last few months in this election. So let's take a look at Ohio and tell you why it is so important. There are 18 electoral votes in Ohio, and if President Obama wins Ohio again this election, it makes it very problematic for Mitt Romney to win the entire election, because he would have to win essentially all the other swing states to beat President Obama if Obama wins Ohio. One of the big strengths for the president is the northern part of the state. This is the area where the auto industry is. 1 in 8 Ohio jobs is connected to the auto industry. Mitt Romney has the southern part of the state, particularly around Cincinnati. That's a Republican stronghold. And then along this part of the state, the southeast area, that's coal country. And Mitt Romney has been hammering President Obama about his what he says is his opposition to coal. This is how it looked 4 years ago. President Obama won Ohio 52% against John McCain's 47%. And then we break down the demographics even more. 81% of the voters in Ohio are white. President Obama has to win a significant number of white voters, but not all of them. There are 12% black voters, 3% Hispanic, a lot of union voters in Ohio, which tends to favor Democrats. 7% unemployment in Ohio. That is lower than the national average. And the economy in Ohio has been improving greatly because of the auto bailout, which President Obama gets credit for in Ohio. So voters in Ohio are very aware of what's going on with the economy, and in their state, the economy is looking better. Heather?
And from Ohio, now we want to turn our attention to the state of Florida and the biggest swing state that is up for grabs tonight. I want you to take a look at this. Now, we are expecting that President Obama will carry the southern part of the state, but really what comes into play here is the northern part of Florida, especially here along the I-4 corridor. As you can see, it's 132 miles. It stretches from Tampa to Orlando to Daytona Beach. Now, when we talk about that northern part and along the I-4 corridor, as you can see, 11 million voters in the state of Florida. 55%, 6 counties lie along that I-4 corridor, so you can see how important that section of the state is. And keep in mind, a lot of undecideds live right there in that northern part of the state. We want to now take a look and see how this shaped up 4 years ago. And as you can see, President Obama did in fact win the state of Florida, 51% to John McCain's 48%. Although if you look back 4 years previously, it went to President Bush. And the state of Florida, 90% of the time, whoever wins the state of Florida goes on to win the White House. Here's a breakdown of the demographics in the state of Florida. And as you can see, 57% white voters in this state, but Hispanic voters, a large voting bloc here in the state of Florida. And we have seen Senator Marco Rubio out there trying to persuade these voters to go for his candidate, Mitt Romney. And we also know that immigration reform really important to the Latino community, but also is the economy. And if you take a look in the state of Florida, 8.7% unemployment right now, well above the national average. Now, in the state of Florida, they have the second highest foreclosure rate, only behind the state of California.
The social media world has been buzzing all day about the election, and it's still picking up speed. And KTVU's Eric Rasmussen is in our newsroom now, keeping an eye on the trends on both Facebook and Twitter. Eric?
Well, Frank, as you can imagine, I voted in election 2012 are among the top trending hashtags on Twitter here in the Bay Area. Now, if you were brave enough to actually use Twitter or Facebook during the debates, you know there can be a lot of people talking at once, and it can be tough to sort through everything. In fact, today we're hearing already 10 million tweets related to the election. We've heard people talking about long lines, a malfunctioning voting machine in Pennsylvania, and hundreds of thousands of photos of these little I voted stickers. And when it comes to Twitter, no one reaches more people than pop singer Lady Gaga. She has almost 31 million followers. Many of them are, in fact, young people. So let's take a look at what she had to say today. A few hours ago, she wrote, quote, if you're old enough to vote for the first time, exercise your right today. It matters and can change the world. Now, this comment was actually retweeted by President Barack Obama's account. It also included a link to a site that helps people find their polling places. And we'll take a look at another one here. We heard a similar sentiment coming from Ann Romney, of course, the wife of Republican candidate Mitt Romney. This afternoon, she tweeted, "We're so close to the better future we deserve. We just need you to vote." Now, that comment also included a link to one of Romney's websites that helps people find out where they can vote. And of course, we want you to hear from you this election night. You can join the conversation by going to facebook.com/KTVU or on Twitter @KTVU.
We've been talking a lot about the swing states, particularly Virginia, Ohio, and Florida, really the big three. Does Mitt Romney have to win 2 out of those 3 to win the election?
Essentially, yes. In fact, if Obama wins Florida and either of those 2 states, the election is basically over. So it's conceivable, again, if Romney gets 2 of the 3, that he can still do the math. But it's going to be tight either way. He really is having to sort of thread a needle here. But I think the rest of the country sort of, as you begin to call these early states on the East Coast, and we start to look at the map expanding over the night, I think a lot of the country's already fixed, and then we're looking at these battleground states, and that map does favor the president.
And Frank, just within the last few minutes, another state has been called, and it goes to Mitt Romney. The state of Oklahoma and its 7 electoral votes going to Mitt Romney tonight. Next, we have Illinois going to President Obama, winning 50%. Well, let me actually explain something here. I know folks at home, you're looking at these numbers. These are the raw data that we're getting in. The Associated Press, though, has went ahead and declared President Obama the winner of Illinois and those 20 electoral votes. Next, Indiana, which President Obama won 4 years ago, not tonight. The Associated Press now calling that race for Mitt Romney.
One of the most interesting things so far tonight, Frank, is that none of the swing states have been called so far, and they are, of course, critical because as you look at the map, as it stands now, these are the states in red and blue that have already been called by the Associated Press, and there are no surprises here. Mitt Romney was expected to do well through the heartland and through the South, and Barack Obama was expected to do well in the industrial Northeast, on the East Coast, and these are the battleground states that have not been called yet. Colorado is a battleground state. We do have some numbers, and right now Barack Obama is leading Mitt Romney in Colorado 52% to 48%. Iowa has no numbers to report right now. That's also a battleground state. And in the state of Wisconsin, which has been leaning towards the president, he's actually trailing right now. But look, there's only about under 50,000 votes for each so far. There are many more voters than that in Wisconsin, so it's still very early there.
You see on the stage now that Mitt Romney's wife Ann, his 5 sons, their spouses, and 16 of his 18 grandchildren who have been across the street in a hotel watching the returns tonight have all joined him on the stage. Now, he told us earlier in the day that he had only written 1 speech when he came into Boston on his campaign plane this afternoon, and that was a victory speech. Obviously, he did not give that speech tonight. A very disappointed Mitt Romney. This is his 2nd run for the White House, and as we told you earlier this evening, his father, George Romney, whom I knew when he was Secretary of HUD, and I worked on Capitol Hill in the early 70s, he made a run for the White House in 1968 when he was governor of Michigan. Mitt Romney always said he wished he could fulfill his father's dream and for him to be elected president. But we've seen tonight, obviously, that has not happened.
And there you have it, the victory speech from President Obama. He is on stage now, as you can see, with his family and the family of Vice President Joe Biden. The president said that he is returning to the White House for another 4 years. He returns more determined than ever to tackle this nation's problems. Early in his speech, he tried to form a sense of unity in this speech, bringing the country back together. He said that he spoke with Governor Romney tonight, congratulated him on a hard-fought campaign, and said that the Romney family has, quote, chosen to give back, and it is a legacy that we honor tonight. That is the work done by the Romney family. This was a speech really suited for this audience here, full of campaign workers, campaign volunteers. The president said this is the best campaign team and volunteers in the history of politics. After his victory tonight, it may be hard to argue the case otherwise. The president said this is tried to lay an optimistic tone, saying that the economy is recovering. We've had one war end, another war that soon will end. It is certainly the end of a long campaign and a historically expensive campaign. And as much as the excitement is here in this hall tonight, it is worth noting that we have a president returning to office and a Senate still being held by the Democrats, the House being held by the Republicans. So the same division in Washington where we have seen what some would describe as a lack of progress, cooperation between those groups over the past 4 years. The question is, moving ahead into the next 4 years, can that gap be bridged?
The passage of Prop 36 was welcome news to some three-strike inmates serving life in prison. KTVU's Rob Roth went to San Quentin today and talked with some three-strikers who could see freedom soon.
Here at San Quentin, many inmates say they spent a nervous night in their cells watching election returns.
I didn't get any sleep. I'm exhausted.
And when Proposition 36, the measure that modifies the three strikes law, won,
this is the best day I've had. I heard people clapping.
Jonathan Wilson of East Palo Alto is serving a life sentence for false imprisonment over a drug deal in 1998. It was his third strike, but now that Prop 36 is passed, he may get to go home.